This is the Texas Land Guys podcast, hosted by brothers Tim Dosh and Tom Dosh. With their partners David Marshall and Trip Rich, they have built DMRE, the leading land brokerage in Texas. With decades of experience brokering deals between landowners and real estate developers, they take you inside the deals that move the market.
Welcome to the Texas Land Guys podcast. We have a exciting and very unique episode today where Tim and I are going to be looking back on the year and just taking some of the best clips from different interviews that we had with just some incredible guests that came on the podcast throughout the year. And it's going to be a teaser. So if you have started listening recently to the podcast and you haven't gone back and heard some of these episodes, I think you're really going to enjoy the content today, but it's just going to scratch the surface of where we went and some of these conversations. Tim, let's reminisce a little bit. It's crazy to think that we're a year into this.
Yeah, it is. I was just thinking that as you were talking. I remember about a year ago, a little bit longer than a year ago, I'm sitting in our old conference room. So we have in the Houston office, we have 3 conference rooms. This was kind of the medium size one. We had a big conference table in here. And so early on, I was trying to get all the equipment spread out on the conference table and around the conference table. And we had an old aerial in here, and it wasn't working very good. So it's crazy to see, now sitting here with a full studio and just how it's improved and developed. And being a year in, I think when you start this, you're thinking, man, I hope we can keep going. Hope we can make, 20, 30, 40 episodes and, going well past that. And I think both of us have really enjoyed this and excited for next year to keep improving, having new guests on, improve the studio, just make it a better experience, a better offering for our listeners.
Yeah, it's fun to think back on the year. It is, it's exciting and in a lot of ways just encouraging to get all the feedback that we've gotten because I didn't really know what to expect. I think we were excited to do this podcast. You spent a lot of time thinking about it and what are we going to name it and call it and what are we going to talk about and how do you make it interesting? How can we bring in other elements than just talking about land? Because we're full people and it's not that all we do is think about land all the time. And so it's been a lot of experimentation, a lot of improving. And I have to say, we couldn't be here without people like Brad Blanchard here in our Dallas office that's been with us from the start and had a hand in just about everything from building our studios, like physically with his own hands, putting up these walls behind us and all the technology side.
Sewing curtains together. Yeah.
Sewing curtains together. I was telling him before we started, I looked at that picture and I was like, so Tim you had like a map behind you a year ago, but then I already had
aerial.
I already had this wall behind me because Brad was in here at night, drilling holes and putting it up and doing that for us. And so he's been really instrumental. And then Marisol Seegers helped us a lot in the early parts of the year. And then Pavi Francis coming in later in the year to help us. We've had just a whole team. There's so much more that goes into this, than you see. And it's really all the hard work behind the scenes to bring this to our audience. And it's been a lot of fun doing it with you and having the guests on and having the other guys in the company. And I'm excited
it's
for
been
this
awesome.
next year.
And like you, it's been fun hearing just from all of our listeners. We just talk to people, almost every day who are telling us they enjoyed the podcast and things they liked about it. A lot of people have told me we were in their top, 2 or 3 on Spotify, which was pretty fun. We were up there with Rogan and some other people they listened to. So, it's just cool to get to have you develop a relationship, I think, with your listeners and getting to get their feedback and, hear the things that really spoke to them. And that's something we want to continue to improve on and grow in, talking about business, talking about entrepreneurship, but also talking about, health and family and all the other, purpose, the things that are really important to us.
Yeah. And we, like I said a minute ago, we've had some great interviews. We thought it'd be neat to put together kind of a best of episode where we take just 5 clips from different interviews we had throughout the year. There's many more clips we could have taken. So this is just a teaser. So I'd encourage the audience to go back, especially if you started listening later in the year. If you didn't hear some of these full episodes, go back and check these out. We've tried throughout the year to have a kind of a smattering of both content about the market, content about trends, quarterly updates, but then also a lot of these interviews where, like you said, Tim, we're getting into more of like who we are as people. What are our values? What's purpose? What drives us? Whether it's someone that's been in the business a handful of years or this first conversation that we're going to use a clip from was with Jason Baker, earlier in the year. And so Jason's been in the business over 30 years. Do you want to give a little background on him, and we can talk about what we're going to hear in this first clip?
Yeah, we had 2 great episodes with Jason. This first clip is from episode 22, and he's been a friend for over 20 years. Just a really incredible guy, very successful in the business here in Houston. Longtime retail broker, tenant rep broker. We were kind of kidding him about being one of the fathers of tenant rep brokerage. I think he's one of the first guys to really focus on it exclusively and be really successful. Have all the top tenants. And then also has been a really successful developer, retail investor, owns a lot of real estate here in Houston, has a real deep family background, going back to his dad of building shopping centers, buying land, developing, all that kind of thing. So very articulate, very sharp guy, and excited to share this with the audience.
Yeah, in this first clip, he's going to go straight into a conversation we were having, and the wider context was about grocery stores. And if you go back and listen to that episode 22, this clip is taken from where we are really going deeper into what people would probably consider the three most, if not successful, the 3 grocery stores that have the biggest followings. They have like the true like raving fans or champions when you hear about that, and just the culture that these grocery stores have developed. And it's H-E-B, which is a huge Texas, based grocery store that's just completely taken over all of the markets in Texas, including the Dallas market now, because now they're really building very quickly at a high velocity new stores up here. Trader Joe's, which is the clip, is really focusing on Trader Joe's, and then Costco. And I think it was interesting, Tim, listening to this clip again, and you made the comment, like, these are all grocery stores, but they all have completely different experiences. But that's really what they are. It's an experience when you walk into any of these stores.
That's right. Yeah, it continues to draw you back. And he makes the point about culture, which we look at culture for our company, for his company, for these grocery stores. But the success of a company long term is based on the culture that is built within the company, and then maintain that culture. And he talks about the importance of listening, really growing that internally in a way that's healthy. One thing that really struck me as well, when we did these episodes with Jason, it really impacted me, was how hard he's still working. And, the fact that he's been in the business 30 years, he knows about all these retailers. He's still reading books about them. He's still really developing his skill and, developing his craft. And so that's a pretty cool thing to see. He's not just trying to just get the business that's handed to him because he's been around for a long time and do a mediocre job. He's trying to do the best job he possibly can and be as aware and knowledgeable as he can. And so that's encouraging for me to see.
Yeah, I just downloaded the Becoming Trader Joe's on Audible here so I can listen to that over the Christmas break. But I think that same thing, just understanding that. He told us, I can't remember if it was when we were recording or if it was prior, but just even on like social media, we were like, how do you have such great content on your LinkedIn profile? Just really good market content. And he said, it's all him. He's like, he challenged himself to say like, that's going to keep him reading and learning if he has to go post something. And, we know how hard that is. And I don't do as good of a job as I should of being active on there. And so that's encouraging to see someone that is so disciplined and able to do that. Exactly what you said. Never stop learning, always be growth minded.
Yeah, we were talking about that this morning, how when you are growth minded and you're trying to develop in every area of your life, and you're self-aware about the areas you need to grow, just how important that is. How you can remove blind spots, and you can bring different tools in that can really help you, and remove things that are hurting you. And being in your 50s like he is, and still going as strong as he is, and having the impact that he has, I think that's really makes me excited about continuing to grow as well as a leader. And, not just in business, but he talked a lot about family, being a father, being a husband, having a bigger purpose in that. And I think being growth minded is about all those things, growing the whole person.
Well, here it is, the clip from episode 22 with Jason Baker.
What you're touching on is there's not been a category of retailer that has been more disrupted than grocery over the last 20 years. Retailers like Trader Joe's, I understand what you're saying. If you look at their sales per square foot compared to an operator like Kroger, as an example, is that Kroger would do something like $500 a foot, and like on average across our city. My guess is that number's declining, but that Trader Joe's, even in our market, would probably be doing more like $2,000 a foot. I mean, so on a per square foot basis, they're doing much better. I think that not unlike other categories of retail, that first to market in Houston, they opened up with 3 or 4 units, and then they just kind of sat still and they tried to work out the kinks and to figure out what was and wasn't working in this market. They are just like HEB. I would describe them as less of a grocer and more of a great retailer that is passing along savings in some important areas. But I think, Tom, what you're talking about is they are training us how to trade differently. That goes back to the disruption. And so you're never, ever going to Trader Joe's to pick up toilet paper or detergent because that's not what they sell. They are forcing you to come in because they've got some steal on orchids or because of their, whatever the wine deal is that they have each $2 chuck. So they're doing that. And then when they come in, they're going to overwhelm you with a high level of service and comfortableness. I mean, my mother-in-law said to me a week ago, she goes, sometimes I just go into Trader Joe's because I want to be greeted in such a unique and meaningful way. And I go, is that true? And she goes, yeah. She goes, I don't stay in there long. I love being greeted that way. And so there's something to that. They really are. It's less of a place of discovery than Costco, but it's still a place of discovery because you'll find unique deals. But they are, I'm telling you, I just finished the book, Becoming Trader Joe's, and it was fascinating how that company became who they are. And it's even more impressive how they've been able to manage the culture with their founder like long gone. That's another, you're hitting on like these really great brands and how they differentiate themselves. But at the root, I would say of all of them, and I think this is a great thing for us to think about in terms of like what we're doing, you guys at Dosh Marshall, us at Baker Katz, is just the importance of culture and being good listeners and listening to our customers and what they're saying. And in y'all's case, with people that are either buying or selling land, with us, retailers that are expanding, I can give you many examples. I think that the common thread in all of this is what you're talking about is culture. And those 3 companies, at least today, have really strong cultures with things that were put in place years ago that still continue to be a very real part of their business.
So this next clip is going to be from episode 48, an episode that we just recently released for Giving Tuesday with Lane Kipp, who is the founder of All Access International. And Tim, it was really fun to have Lane on the podcast. He brings so much energy and just such an intentional person. And I think this one really spoke to me. And it's such a good episode. So I encourage our listeners to go back and listen to the whole thing. But this episode really spoke to me on just what it looks like to really have a real active faith and make a big decision like he made to leave, what he referred to as his dream job, building yachts, to going. And at the time it meant picking up with his new wife and moving to Haiti and being a missionary. And then now it's meant starting All Access International so that others have access to these incredible programs to give people that are in physical poverty or spiritual poverty more opportunity in their lives.
Yeah, I think, for both of us, this is so much of who we are. It's not just about deals and making money and being successful. And that's important to us. We want to have a strong company, healthy culture. We want to do well for our clients. But at the same time, there has to be a purpose outside of that. And so talking to a guy like Lane and seeing just his faith and obedience, like really, truly believing God, obeying what God's saying, not wanting to just check the box and, be a Christian, go to church, kind of do the Christian things, but not have an impact for change around the world. And, Jesus is commanding to feed the poor, clothe people that need clothing, to go visit people in prison, to serve people, to share the gospel. And so Lane just has this heart of like, wow, there's all this suffering in the world. There's all this pain. There's people that are hungry. There's people that need to figure out how to have employment, and how to build businesses to get out of poverty long term. There's just all these issues, sex trafficking. I mean, you just go through the list. There's so much suffering in the world. What am I doing over here? Just living my comfortable, easy life and not being an agent of change. And so it's so cool to see the people that really take God's word seriously and they go take action. And Lane's one of those guys. And so we've loved being a partner with him and getting to invest in what he's doing, trying to encourage him. He's encouraged us a lot, I think. And it's honestly very convicting, sitting next to him and talking through this. And I encourage everybody to go back and listen to that episode if you haven't, because it's a very inspiring episode.
Yeah, I think when he mentions there at the very beginning of this clip that you're going to hear, that he was, I guess, at church and heard a sermon, and then he just questioned, like, okay, so this is what Jesus commanded, but I don't feel like, I'm doing that or we're doing that. We're not actually doing what Jesus commanded. Like, we're doing all the Christian things of going to church, and but we're not actually doing what Jesus commanded. It reminded me of probably how I felt with like every Francis Chan book that I've ever read,
Yeah.
and just how convicting that is, because it's the way of looking at Jesus's teachings and scripture, and basically saying, like, we might be really familiar with it, but what are we doing about it? Because if Jesus is saying these things and commanding these things and telling us this is how you live a life to follow me, but then we're just not doing it, then we're really, we're being very hypocritical in the way that we're living. So that really stuck out to me. I've felt that in my own life several times, with whether it's a sermon or a book that I'm reading. Radical by David Platt is definitely a book that, makes you feel that way and is very convicting. And yeah, to see a guy like Lane, like you said, that so much opportunity. I've talked to owners of engineering companies here that would hire Lane, today if he was wanting to go back into the for-profit space, but he's really committed to what they're doing at All Access. And it's been a privilege just to get to be a part of what they're doing and help support them, and also just see the impact that's coming out of just a life of submitting to God's will for his life. And that's the other thing that really sticks out to me in this clip is a lot of times when you're trying to honor God in your life, you're thinking, okay, somebody else did something. Do I just need to do that same thing? It's kind of the idea of, I want the easy way. I want to see what someone else did and do that. And Lane really didn't do that. He was very in tune with what God was calling him to do. And then God has given him this path to start something. And then he says it here. Now it opens the door for someone that would be in the position he was in to stay in that position and really honor God in that situation. And so it's seeing his personal faith journey and just how intentional he is in his faith here in this clip, that we really want our audience to hear. And then, like you said, go back and listen. This is from episode 48. So enjoy this clip, and hopefully it encourages you to listen to the whole thing.
It probably goes back to just my own faith story. I mean, I grew up in the church, Tim, but I remember when I was about 11 or 12, I don't remember the sermon or what we were talking about, but I remember thinking, we don't do that. So what are we doing here? Is this real? Is this legit or not? Or what are we doing here? I guess I was a pretty bored junior high kid, and I just started reading the Bible for myself. And over the course of about a year and a half, starting with Matthew through the New Testament and going back in the Old Testament, read the Bible for myself, fell in love with Jesus and the mission he was on, and was already seeing a disconnect between the American Christian life and this mission in the Bible of being redeemed and being a part of redeeming the world. But I didn't know what to do with that. As a young, obviously junior high kid, going into high school, read Radical by David Platt, who really reassured that perspective. But my thought was, hey, I'll go make a lot of money and give well towards that. And kind of still chasing the American dream, I think, a little bit. It was when I did that and my soul was still empty. That is when I was really thinking, okay, God, what am I doing here? What do you have for me? And so I just kind of put it out on the table of, I'll follow wherever you lead me, God. And that's been some pretty crazy places so far. So it was a dangerous prayer at the time, but it's been truly God who has led all this. And that's, I think, just even a larger testament to what we're doing, what we're working on, is it wasn't really my grand idea. It was just being okay with wherever God would lead me, even if that meant leaving my dream job, which still to this day has been really hard. I'm always tempted to go back. Every time they put out a new boat, I'm like, man, I could have driven that to the Bahamas. Yeah, so I wish I knew in greater detail, but it's really just been a journey of a step of faith and taking each step. And a lot of it was, I felt like something was missing in that time. And looking back now, which we'll get into All Access and the tool we built, but I think if I would have had a tool, like if All Access would have existed while I was a naval architect, I think I could have honestly stayed and used this tool and had an even more impactful life than what God's led me through today. And so that is kind of a testament to the tool and what we're doing is now, like if you're an accountant at EY in Dallas and you're struggling, you're having that same struggle, my prayer would be maybe this tool could help you fulfill that by being a part of what God's doing around the world and possibly and truly make more impact than if you left that job at EY and tried to be a missionary, which is a very, very hard task. And so that's my hope, is to I really get excited about other young professionals who are also wrestling with that and being able to meet them where they are and help them make an incredible impact from where they are. That's what really gets me fired up.
So this next clip that you're going to hear is from episode 21, where we sat down with Eric Overton of Hilltop Residential. Tim, Eric's been a friend for a long time, so this was a fun episode. I have to give a little shout out. I'm wearing the Hilltop pullover today because Eric was in the office yesterday and I was wearing a different competitor's pullover, and he didn't stop giving me a hard time, including this morning. So I sent him a picture this morning and told him I was going to be wearing this on the podcast and it would be permanent on YouTube. And so it's better than just me wearing someone else's in a meeting with him yesterday. But I like getting under Eric's skin a little bit. So actually it was pretty enjoyable that he wouldn't let it go. But this was a good episode.
He's one of our longtime clients. I mean, going back to maybe 2011, 2010, it's been a long time working with Eric and at different companies at JLB. He was one of the top guys at JLB for a long time, then at D.R. Horton. And then, now at Hilltop, which Hilltop is really good friends of ours. We've invested with them. Just a great, really solid company. So he's a real veteran in the business and also just a really quality guy. I know he likes to kid both of us. So he's always kidding me about being in Cabo all the time and not being in the office. So there's some good banter going back and forth. But I think what I liked about this clip is just the wisdom and discernment that he's had in his career and wanting to pursue purpose. And I think we were talking before about being growth minded, looking at where you are and saying, hey, this is good, but maybe this isn't where I'm supposed to be. Where could I be that really aligns with the person I want to become, with where my family is, and that gives me the most impact to have real purpose in my life. And so you see that with Eric, and really excited that he's landed at Hilltop and getting to work with those guys and getting to build something that's going to be really special there.
Yeah, I agree. And, even since we recorded this was episode 2021. So that was a lot, 6 months ago or so. And so, Eric's already really hit the ground running with Hilltop and, has several projects underway, which is exciting to see. What really sticks out to me in this clip as we were listening to it again was just Eric's humility. It really stuck out when he talked about going from the different, very successful companies he was at to being on his own to then going back to working with partners. And I think, Tim, we can relate to just the value of having partners and working together. Mm-hmm. He makes the comment about iron sharpens iron, which is a reference to, a proverb in scripture. And I just think it's so true. I think that there's a tendency to feel like I want to be like the lone wolf. I want to be like an Elon Musk who's been able to kind of like do so much. And a lot of people look at that as like he's done it by himself. But I think we realize the benefit of having others around you, having partners. And that's a lot of humility, because a lot of guys that we've seen leave a company, start their own company, they have a really hard time having that type of humility and that type of discernment. He very quickly, he even kind of says in this clip, like, it was not that he ever planned on really going and being on his own. He was just looking for the right opportunity. And so when that timing happened and there's the opportunity that came up with David Wiley, he took advantage of it. We worked with David Wiley for a long time. I think you talked about that on one of our first episodes, that it was on the plane to India that you sat next to David Wiley, and he's the one that hired you to go over to ARA at the time, and that got you into land brokerage with ARA after being at Caldwell. So it's pretty neat just all of the history that we have with Eric, but also with David, and like you said, the quality of people that they are. So this was another 2-part that we did with Eric. He references that there's a previous episode, so there's episode 20 as well. So definitely go back and listen. He really gets into, in these 2 episodes, what it looks like to be successful in business, but also purpose. And I think these clips that we're hearing, that's a current theme, that success is one thing, but we always want our audience to know success is empty in and of itself. And we're made for so much more than just making money and being successful in business. And this is a neat one because he talks about his family, and he talks about why his family and the stage of life his kids were at was really critical in his decision making. So enjoy this clip. Tim, anything else you want to say?
I was just going to add real quick. I love your point about partnership. And I think a core belief we have with DMRE and Ascent is purpose happens in partnership on a team. And I think that's been kind of a disruptive idea in our business because people like to say they're a team, like to say that they're partners, but there's a lot of individualism that goes on and people trying to be the hero and do it by themselves and, get the whole pie for themselves, all that kind of thing. And that typically leads to short-term success, but not long-term success and legacy. And I think it's so key to think about aligning yourself with quality partners, quality team, people that share the same values, same vision. I think that really leads to purpose more than being on your own and trying to just figure it out yourself. Definitely a lot more fun to do it as part of a team.
Yeah, my last days at Horton were kind of this time 2 years ago in 23.
Okay.
The shorter version of the story is I had been at D.R. Horton for about 5 years. Like we said in the last episode, sort of helped build the team from 4 or 5 people to 70 people. We did a bunch of projects. Things were going really well. During that time, just on my own personal life, like a lot had changed and shifted. My kids went from being 8 years old, 7 years old, and I guess the twins were 4. And then fast forward 5 years and the twins are 8. And my son was getting ready to be a teenager. And there's just so much more that was going on in their life. I was doing a lot more with my church and kind of some things there. And so I really just kind of felt like sort of constantly tugged in a lot of different directions and really kind of having a value to do things well and feeling like, gosh, I was rushing off to work, maybe leaving things at home, not where I wanted them. Then I would rush off from work, leaving things not where I wanted them there to get somewhere else. And just kind of this sense of, is this really where I need to be? And, through a lot of just kind of prayer and talking with mentors and talking with other people, came to the decision, I don't really think that my career is supposed to continue at D.R. Horton. Really good company, really good people. I think that you can be in a place where you're just not the right fit for what somebody wants and something's not the right fit for you. And that doesn't mean that it's bad per se in any way, but I just think we always do better when we're operating out of a sense of purpose. Through these conversations, just kind of made the decision that, again, wasn't the place for me and I wasn't the right person for it is kind of the easiest way I could synthesize it. And so I ended up leaving in April and May of 23, took that summer off, spent a great summer with my family, just hanging out, getting recharged, really intentional time with kids who were like in a very pivotal point in their life. And I think that's something that was going to be like sort of hopefully a core memory for them. From there, kind of tried to figure out what I wanted to do. I got fortunate enough to, through a relationship that I had at Kroll Holdings from way back in the day, I had a friend who needed some consulting on a short-term basis. So I was able to help her out, which was, I think, helpful for her and great for me. And just one of the many ways that God provided for me and my family throughout that whole process. And then early 24, I sought some clarity on what I wanted to do. And so I just started a small development company called Terebinth Development. I would say that starting that I was certainly really excited to do it, but it wasn't, I don't feel like I always just had this burning desire to like start something or do my own thing. I think my desire has always been more to be with like really good people in the right spot doing things that I liked, but I just hadn't seen that opportunity yet. Just wanting to be faithful and wanting to provide. I kind of started this, did some additional consulting, started working on some pre-development stuff, some of it with you guys. And then, fast forward to another relationship that I'd had for a really long time with a guy named David Wiley, who's one of the co-founders of Hilltop with Greg Finch. And David and I had conversations just throughout the years. And he's always been a guy that I've just been really drawn to. We have very similar faith, very similar values, very similar life stages. And so he's always been kind of one of those guys that you run across with in the business. And you're like, man, if I ever had the opportunity to work with him, that'd be great. And I think he feels the same way. And then Greg Finch, who's his partner, is a really great guy who shares some similar values. And so they had built this company and we had talked about it at kind of various points in my earlier career, and it just never seemed right. But then they reached back out, and I think just the way God works in everybody's lives, like they were in a little bit different place. I was in a little bit different place. I think some of the things that I had realized over a year of being out on my own that I was missing, like having partners, being able to bounce things off of people. You talked about iron sharpening iron and how that just kind of makes everybody better. And we just started having more and more of these conversations and say, well, let's just see where this goes. And then after a couple of months, I really felt like, man, this is what I need to be doing. This checks sort of all of the boxes on my core values. This feels like the right time. And so I'm super energized and excited to be able to kick this thing off with them and then really get to also be part of the existing Hilltop team and family of people who are already doing like great work on the value add multifamily side, and utilize all those resources that they have and then build on that with a development company. I think is it's going to be really, I don't get excited about a lot, I think, as you know, but I am really excited about it.
I'm really excited about this next clip where we sat down with John Pharris of Caprock. This was episode 43. And so this was not long ago that Tim and I had the privilege of sitting down with John. And this is just like a 5-minute clip. But as we were listening to this again, I was thinking it's so comprehensive, and how he discusses business, and he talks about like strategy in business and the importance of making money and being sustainable, but then how he very naturally goes into purpose and what purpose should be. And he makes it really personal. He talks about building your life and what your life should be built on. And even within business, because there are going to be difficult and challenging economic times. The context here is he's talking about the GFC, the Great Financial Crisis, and him starting Caprock, which has become one of the, foundational, most successful industrial companies in the country, just very successful industrial company that him and his partner established during that time. But it was a really difficult time. And because they started out of that and those challenges, it really created the foundation for how they think about their business, but also how they think about their people. So, Tim, what were your thoughts? I mean, this is a pretty incredible clip that our audience is about to hear.
Yeah, I really enjoyed talking to John, and he's someone that you kind of know up there in Dallas, but I never met him. So I was hearing a lot of this for the first time, but his story is incredible because going from in the Great Recession, buying his first deal and literally sweeping it out, sweeping this warehouse out and cleaning it himself, to now owning billions of dollars of industrial real estate across the country, some incredible properties in California and Texas and really all over the place. What really speaks to me from what he says is his humility. I mean, so many people that we know that have had the story that he has. There's so much chest beating. There's so much flexing the numbers. This is what I've done. This is what I've made. This is, there's just this pride that comes out. I think that's very normal, especially for men. We want to beat our chest. And what you hear from him is just incredible humility. I mean, he talks about how hard it was. He talks about, the grit, the resilience that's needed to be successful as an entrepreneur. But he talks so much about purpose and what really matters. And he just speaks, straight to, hey, all the stuff people really want is meaningless. You think you want to make a lot of money so you can buy a great car and buy a great house and have a great vacation house and all these vacations, whatever you think you want to spend your money on. He just says it's meaningless, doesn't matter. And I think that should hopefully really impact you as a listener, wherever you are. Maybe you're someone who's in college, you're starting your career, or you're a young person, you're looking forward in your career, and you're thinking, if I were to achieve this success, I'd be happy. And or you're someone who's deep into success, deep into decades in the business, and maybe you're struggling with meaning and purpose. Hearing someone like this that I think we can all look up to just because of his success in business, but hearing just how clear he is about what really matters and what he's prioritized, it's a really just encouraging two episodes that we did with him, and really inspiring hearing his story and just the success. I mean, coming out of the Great Recession and how well they've done.
Yeah, and I think just adding on to what you said about success, and we've already hit it in this episode, but success being empty. He talks about people losing everything or their net worth really going down. And so there's the emptiness of success when you keep having this success, but maybe parts of your life are falling apart. And that's where he's talking about, what are you building your life on? Maybe your marriage is falling apart, or your kids, or, something is going on in your life. And then there's the success that, it crumbles, and you realize like something can happen in the market or the stock market or, the area that you're in. And then suddenly, there is a lawsuit or whatever it is. And then your hope was in just your bank account, and then that and your net worth is just depleted. And so that really comes through as he's talking about it. And, he's somebody that definitely lives it too. And he's, like you said, it's inspiring for us because we're trying to run our companies in a way that our culture and everything that we're doing, we know we're not perfect. We make mistakes, but we want it to point to our faith ultimately, just like he's trying to do. And it's neat to have other business owners and leaders in the space doing the same thing. It's good to have Californians moving to Texas and moving those kind of businesses here. Good Californians moving out here and just setting up companies like this. So enjoy this episode. Like Tim said, there were 2 episodes here that we had with John. So definitely go back and check those out. We just released them a couple months ago.
Well, those are great points. I think an important personality trait of any entrepreneur is resilience and grit, and being able to withstand bad outcomes and being told no a lot. Brokers experience that all the time too. I would put them, brokers or entrepreneurs by their nature, and being able to have an optimistic attitude and being able to realize that tomorrow is another day. But in order to be successful, you have to do all the right things, and you have to put one foot in front of the other, and you have to make the calls. You have to knock on the proverbial doors. You also have to think, because to excel in a very competitive environment that we are all in, you have to constantly be thinking one step ahead of the next person. That is one way that you separate yourself, your company, and it's just constantly thinking, what is the next thing? How can I be one step ahead? And even when you get told no 100 times in a day, how do you get up the next day and say, all right, today's a new day. We're going to make it happen right now. The other thing that the GFC and going through that experience taught me is all the things that the world puts out there as really important, right? You have a certain house, you have a certain bank account, you drive a certain car. It's totally meaningless. All of those can be taken away in a flash. And when really bad economic times happen, you see the people that build their reputation or their foundation on the wrong things and how impersonally impactful that is. And all of a sudden their net worth goes from something to something less, and they think that's the end of the world. And when you start with or have that experience of being in a huge downturn like that, and you realize that those things don't matter. What matters is friendships, faith, family, and really what are you going to build your life upon? Because all these things will fade. And if you just put all your trust in a bank account, like a lot of businesses tend to do, or people in this environment do, that's going to lead to bad outcomes. And you can't control if you're going to make a deal, you're going to make a sale, but what you can control to a pretty large degree is who are you as a person? What are your role? Who are your role models? Who do you want to become? What is the main focus of your life? And if it's just business, you're only looking at one small aspect of things. Like when we talk about things at Caprock, and we talk about it with our family, we want to be building the whole person. So yes, we're in business to make dollars, to make a profit, to provide for our investors, to provide for our family. Never get away from that, because that's what business is for. But in addition to that, it's about making an impact on the world from our faith perspective. I'm a Christian. It's also making an impact on the kingdom. And Caprock now has been blessed with a certain platform, and it's our obligation, in my view, to give back in many ways. And so that could be giving back to the team and helping build them up, and could be to use the financial resources to better ministries. It could be just being out in the church and saying there's way more than just focusing on business. There's a lot of different aspects that are required to make a well-rounded individual, and we want to be able to help shape those people. And so when Caprock started, again, 16, 17 years ago, when we had absolutely no money and we had no idea if Caprock was going to work, we created the Caprock Giving Foundation with the goal that at some point we should have some profits, and we wanted to make sure that hardwired into the company, we had essentially a tithing mechanism within the company. And at the outset, it kind of seemed silly. It's like, you have no money. What are you going to give? You can't even pay your rent, like things like that. But you had a vision for what Caprock could be, and that there was going to be financial success. And what is the point of that financial success? Well, one aspect of that is giving back into the community. So we created the Caprock Giving Foundation, and now we have been blessed to give away millions of dollars over the years to charities, to nonprofits, to ministries. And now we're starting an annual trip for our team to actually get the proverbial get your hands dirty. So this summer we're going to Costa Rica. We're going to be handing out wheelchairs with a group that we support called Free Wheelchair Mission. So I'm going into that background because we don't just focus only on business. We focus on how can the business make an impact. And for us, it's a kingdom impact because our Pat and I are as Christians, but it's also, if you're not in that faith tradition, you still need to be looking at who are you as a person? What are you putting your value in? And there is so much more to life than just putting dollars in a bank account.
So we have one more clip here, and it's going to be back to our conversation with Jason Baker. This was the next episode because we had a 2-part episode with Jason. So this was episode 23. And in episode 23, he really got into more just about purpose and his faith journey, his life, his growing up in Houston, his family. And this is another just incredible clip. It's about 5 minutes. It'll fly by because it's so interesting. And he talks about both his relationship with his dad and the impact his dad had on his life. But then he gets into his own marriage, his relationship with his wife, and then his parenting. He has three of his own girls, and then and a fourth girl that they adopted from China. So just incredible story. Like we said, we've been friends with Jason for a long time. He's the real deal, and there's so much humility that comes out of this. I think, Tim, we've known Jason during this whole period and long before this, and for him to say in this clip that he felt like, not that he was a fraud, but that just he wasn't living the life, that he was supposed to be living, and that he was wrapping too much of his identity up in his work. It's pretty amazing because I know during that whole time he was still having a great impact on us. But to me, it just speaks to so much humility that Jason has.
Yeah, it's interesting because this was all from a question I asked about, now he's in his 50s, I think early 50s. How do you still keep working the way you do with the intensity and the excellence that you work? Because we just see so many people, they get to a certain age and they're coasting and they're not growing and they're atrophying and their business atrophies. And, Jason is someone who continues to grow. He's so sharp. He's so articulate. And the way he answered me was an incredible answer because it goes on for like 5 minutes and he starts with his dad. He talks about hard work and how that was modeled for him. He talks about, his dad's humility and that he was always submitting to Christ and in prayer and just the kind of man that he was. But I think just how vulnerable Jason gets in this quote. All these quotes or all these clips are great, but the way he goes into talking about the root issue of identity, who we are as a man, who you are as a woman, who are you really? And it's not what people think you are. It's not this persona he talks about. He has always been so respected, so looked up to by people, but just humility of saying, I really care about who I really am and really grabbing a hold of who God wants me to be and working on the identity, working on the issues. A different part of the conversation, he talks about just pursuing healing in some ways, things that were blocking him in his relationship with his daughters and his wife and needing to work through those things to have, not just to kind of be coasting and things being okay, but to have a really deep, intimate relationship with his daughters and his wife. And so I think it's just such a encouraging and a convicting quote, I think, for all of us. I think we all, when you listen to this, you're going to say, man, I want that. That's what I want. But that comes through a lot of introspection, being willing to face the hard things and maybe the pain that each of us has to deal with personally and get to a place of real healing. And I liked how he said at the end about it's about integration. It's about really integrating who you are as a person, as a man or a woman, not just the business self and a marriage or family self and then a spiritual self over here, but integrating it all into a whole person that is growing and is developing, is self-aware and honest about the struggles and the issues you need to work on, but is constantly growing and becoming a better version of yourself over time, and is healthy in all those areas. And so he's a great model of that. And it's cool to see these men that we have on this podcast, and they have so much success, but there's so much humility, and they're telling you the story of how they've gotten to where they are in a way that's very vulnerable, which I think is just so cool. Because I think when we've been in the business now for a long time, there's a lot of chest beating that goes on, around a conference table at work. When you meet with these different developers or different landowners, whoever it is, there's a lot of billionaires we work with. There's a lot of chest beating. There's a lot of pride. There's a lot of, look at what I've done. Look at who I am. And well, a lot of it is just a lack of vulnerability, a lack of healing, a lack of integration. Like you mentioned earlier, there's a lot of brokenness, in relationships. And so there might be a big bank account. There might be a lot of notches in the belt of, oh, I've done all these deals and I've built whatever, but there's a brokenness in the person. And so what we want to get to the finish line for us is a healthy marriage, healthy family, healthy work relationships with clients, with the people we work with. And yeah, success for sure. Doing an excellent job, being good at what we do, but being fully integrated in all those ways.
Yeah, that's great, Tim. As you were talking, I was thinking about just, John and Jason. We just listened to John's clip. Now we have Jason's clip, just talking about that humility coming out in these conversations with really successful businessmen. And it made me think of some of our investors, for Ascent, that are extremely successful and have built companies, but have that same humility that you're talking about. And I think a common thread there is they also live with purpose, and they live in recognition of just how screwed up we all are and how much we're forgiven by God, and how that allows us to come from a place of humility. It's still a struggle, but if you think that it's all because of what you've done and who you are, and then, and it's all up to you, and you don't realize that we do make mistakes and we are screwed up and that we need a savior, then you're going to have that pride that just eats at us, because it's the most common thing in human nature is pride, that we need that. We need to, to the next person, we need to compare ourselves and we need to be better. And so this is a great conversation you're about to hear. So here it is, episode 23, quite a bit earlier in the year that we have with Jason. Definitely go back and listen to this whole episode.
I would say first and foremost, by the way, those memories, thinking about Tom, you in Turkey, I was at your parents' house. You were in high school. You might have been a freshman in high school. One of the early times that I spent time with your parents and Tim and your wonderful family. I would say, by the way, as a total sidebar, I think the way that you and your family did life and the time I got to be sort of at the table with your parents probably influenced the way that we raised our kids as much as anybody. It had a humongous impact getting to know your mom and dad so well. And so it is not surprising that they have ended up with the kids and the relationship with their kids and now their grandchildren the way that they have. So we said that at the beginning. There's a real high level of affection for the Dosh family. As it relates to work, my dad modeled hard work for us. He came to Houston by way of the NFL. But back when he played, there was the idea of signing a $100 million contract and being done for good by the time you're in your mid-30s. That was not a thing. He shared these amazing stories with me about the jobs he had in the off season. And he came from a blue-collar family. I think that, practically speaking, my mom came from a more affluent background because of the view that my dad had into what was really sort of a sad family setting with my mom's side of the family. I think my dad was sort of like, we're going to go the other direction. And so I grew up in a beautiful home with a beautiful family, but my dad never stopped modeling hard work for us, my siblings and me. And that's something I've just been always really, really thankful for. But I would pair that with also not having a memory as a kid growing up I don't have a memory as a child of not seeing my dad on his knees each evening. For a kid growing up, that was very powerful for me. And so I would say the combination of those two things was extremely, going back to that word, extremely foundational for how I saw work and how I saw family and how I saw walking in the fear of the Lord. My dad, while not perfect, I think he did that really well. Both of my parents did that really well. So I'm really, really grateful for that. I would say too, just again, I'm being completely honest with you. I think that you can enter into work and you can make up in your mind that I'm not going to allow work to be my identity. That's a lot harder to do than to just talk about. And I think that there have to be some things in place that keep that from happening. I think starting with who you're married to, I think that that's a really big thing. Because your wife will remind you every single day just how imperfect you are, but in all the appropriate ways, like in all the healthy ways. My wife has certainly been that for me, that she constantly reminds me that we need to be pressing into things that are eternal. And those things are, according to Scripture, the souls of men and the Word of God. So when in doubt where to spend and invest your time, just take it back to those two things. And so I think that that's really big. And then I would say lastly, this could be a lot longer conversation. We could unpack things. I would say I've got 4 daughters. They're 18, 16, 14, and 11. Our youngest daughter, we adopted from China. I was probably with you in Colorado on a singles retreat when we were first introduced to this idea of adopting a kid. We were having a really hard time having children.
Yeah.
We'd had multiple miscarriages. It was a really hard and lonely season, kind of dark. It was we were introduced on that trip to a family out of Chicago that was in the process of adopting their third kid from China. Complete strangers. At the time, it felt like angels. And they just said, y'all ought to consider adopting. We began the process shortly after that, got written approval to adopt, and then got pregnant. Wow. And we had 3 biological kids, June of 06, June of 08, June of 10. So every other year in June, we had these blonde-headed, blue-eyed girls. And then we got to a point where my wife said, if we're going to have another kid, this would be a good time to have it. I said, I think we know too much about the adoption, the plight of these little girls in China. So we went back to China and we got a girl. She's been, if you want to expand the worldview of your children, bring an adoptive child into your home. I mean, that's just been an incredible thing. But all that to say is we went and got her in 2015. I just remember bringing her back into our home. And it was around that same time that I just feel like kind of hit bottom. I hit a really rough patch. And I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that I had unknowingly allowed more of my identity to be rooted in who I was professionally than who I was in Christ. And it was eating at me and it was weighing on me. That honestly began for me an incredible 10-year journey into really understanding God's purpose for our work, like his design for our work, the potential dangers of work, and then developing and putting together a new purpose for my work. A lot of the things you were talking about, Tim, were real in terms of service and teaching and everything else. But God slowly, starting 10 years ago, really began to move me from this place of being sort of what I would describe as like this idealized persona to being more fully integrated, where you were actually able to receive God's grace and operate hopefully in grace and humility towards others. And it just completely changed the way that I saw our work, my work. And I'm just so thankful for that. I don't know if that would have happened without the adoption and the Lord like really kind of walking alongside of me through a really hard period of time. But I constantly remind myself, like, I'm just so grateful that journey started in my 40s and not in my 80s or my 70s, or not have started it at all. I feel like I've experienced personally and professionally more of what God intended over the last 10 years than in the first 15 or 20 years. So I'm really grateful for that.
That was fun, Tim. Those were some pretty amazing clips to listen to. I think that as I was listening back, I want to go back now and listen to those full episodes because it's amazing how quickly I forget. I knew those were great interviews, but just listening to some of those clips, I remember so many other nuggets that came out of these different conversations we had in these specific episodes. But then again, like we had so many other great conversations and great interviews throughout the year with others in the company and some of our other guests that came on.
Yeah, it's really fun to go back and listen and some really quality episodes with quality people. It makes me excited about 2026 and moving into next year. And like we said at the beginning, trying to improve the podcast. We'll bring on more guests. I'm excited to continue to talk about purpose, about entrepreneurship, leadership, but also talk about real estate. And it'd be fun to see the changes in the market next year. The big stories that we have no idea that are coming next year. We had some crazy things this year that happened in the market, geopolitically and nationally, and then also just in Texas. So it'll be fun just to continue to talk to our audience and get to share all these things.
Yeah, and we still have a couple great episodes left to finish the year. Obviously, this is looking back. This is looking at just some of the highlights from some of these conversations, but we still have a couple weeks left. And one of the goals we had at the beginning of the year and one of the questions we had was, are we going to release every week? And it's pretty incredible accomplishment to release every week. And so the one coming up next with Taylor Entz during Christmas week is one of my favorites that we got to do interview-wise throughout the year, just with the theme of Christmas. And then the one that we have coming up after that, where we're going to be talking about just planning for next year and some of the ways that we think about planning and goal setting. Another great interview or great episode. So I'm excited too. It's going to be fun next year to do this best of again and look back at the beginning of the year and just see where we've come. And if you're listening, we love hearing from you. Like we really do. Every time I get an email, every time someone tells me in a meeting or on a call that they're listening, first thing I always do is just thank them for the support, because I think that we do this because of our audience, because we hope that people can take away not just knowledge and information about real estate and what we do, but I think, Tim, I think you share this too, the both of us, it's more about impact and purpose and who we are as people and wanting to be a positive influence in others' lives. And do that through business and do that through the platform that we have. And we're really blessed because that's shared with our other partners and other team members. And the reason that DMRE and Ascent, 100 Times Harvest, that we have the brand and the reputation that we do is because that's shared across the team, that we always want to do the right thing. And when we don't, and when we make a mistake, we want to own up to that and be honest about that. But it's special to get to do this with you. And it's neat to get to have so many of our other team members on the podcast. And we'll have more of our team members that haven't been on joining this next year too, which will be fun to share with our audience.
Yeah, I'm really excited. It's been a lot of fun so far. And I think it's been more impactful and encouraging than I thought it was going to be. And I thought it was going to be great. So I'm excited for a whole nother year of it and just keep it going and keep improving it.
All right. Well, thanks, Tim.
Thank you for listening to our podcast today. If you have questions about land you own in Texas, send us an email at texaslandguys@dmre.com and follow us on LinkedIn to stay updated.